Hello. Good morning. Thank you for the John Denver songs. Thank you for the one you heard before, and for playing Imagine. I guess that's important today. Imagine is obviously the word for the month, the power of the month, and definitely a powerful time in our planet, let alone our country. Okay? The John Denver line that you just sang, Kathy, was, "Life is worth living, but I don't know the end." Wow. That's big, right? How are you doing with PCSD? Post-confinement stress disorder? Yeah? Yeah? I wish I could say post-COVID stress disorder. But is it over yet? No. We go up and we go down. It's certainly not over for the rest of the planet, right? But it would be really nice when we can actually say post-COVID stress disorder is done, right? But right now we're still in the middle. We're getting past a little bit about the confinement, but all the other things, we don't know the end yet, right? Especially not in places like England and India and other places in the third world. This has been a test, you know. This has been a test of the emergency response system of the planet. That's how I have to think about it, right? It's been a test of our own country's emergency response system. Some of it we did well, some of it not sure yet. It's been about 15 months. I love that number, it's my favorite number. But I remember back in March of 2020 when we shut the world for a little while. And the next month, Janine used a very powerful phrase that I think we're still dealing with. She talked about unprecedented uncertainty. Remember that? I sure do. It's still here, right? We're still figuring out what we're going to do, how we're going to do, what we should do. Last June, I was here and I was speaking quite a bit about death because there were lots of people going through that experience. In October, I talked about the Sabbath, which was supposed to be rest and renewal. I don't think we've quite got to that yet. I was asked to speak last February. I couldn't do it. I canceled. I was sick. I was up and down. I was depressed. I was elated. Life was just way too complicated. I think, you know, you want to be able to come up here and sit and offer encouragement to people. I didn't think I could back then. Anybody else in that same spot? It's been pretty hard. It's been pretty hard, off and down, up and down, off and on. But, you know, sometimes I admit I was just really depleted from PCSD, all of these other things. We have to admit the shadows and the hard times in our life as well as the good times, right? We have to acknowledge the dark times, and they've definitely been around us for lots of people. It took until about May this year for me to get going again. I had some great experiences in May with there's a thing called 555. It's a day of manifesting in a lot of traditions. It comes from the tradition of Fatima, actually. And it's kind of interesting because she is a presence in all three great religions on the planet. She's a part of Christian tradition, Catholic. She's a part of Islamic tradition. And she's a part of Judaic tradition. So the hand of Fatima is a way of manifesting what we want. And I spent quite a bit of time that day manifesting some changes in my life. And I also turned 70 years old that year. think I should know what's going on by now, right? I hope. But this recovery from PCSD is, of all different forms, is not really there. We've had to do a lot of adjusting. There's new words in our vocabulary, right? Reimagining is a new word, right? We've reimagined workplace, we've reimagined contact, we've reimagined relationships, we've reimagined gatherings. People have done things not only on the net, but in all sorts of ways. People have held concerts in all sorts of new ways, right? It's been really interesting. Our imagination got triggered. Did we need that? I think so. We always do, right? We always need that kind of renewal, that kind of re-understanding, readjusting. But this time, it's been for the whole planet, right? We get stories every now and then of what's happening in other countries, right? A little bit. Good stories, but an awful lot of painful ones, both in our own country and other places. But it's been real interesting to watch. That's what's most interesting to me, is how we cope with this, what we do in response to this challenge. And that has a lot to do with what we talk about at Unity, of course, what we think, what we feel, and what we believe. This challenges us to think, to feel, and to figure out what we believe, and then also what choices we make, how we respond. So we kind of ask ourselves, like people have been doing for thousands of years, why did this happen? Right? Plagues have been happening on this planet for millennia, before recorded history probably too, right? What did we attribute those to? The gods, right? Odin did this, or Thor did this, or who knows, all the other gods, the Hindu gods, the Roman gods, the Greek gods. Or somehow they didn't name it after the goddesses, necessarily. Funny thing about that, mostly the goddesses brought us healing from those things, but it was definitely sort of a God thing that brought the plagues, right? All the way back to Egypt and Mesopotamia and all those other places. It's interesting, you know. I have some friends in Bozeman who have had a women's drumming circle that has been going on for 30 years. And they drum and do a lot of shamanic testing and shamanic experiences when they drum. And they asked where COVID came from. And just a very simple answer that they got was, I'm a natural phenomenon. I've been on the planet for years. I'm part of the natural cycle of cleansing and renewal. Obviously, it's been going on. We see how people respond to it. What are some other possible choices? What are the other things we attribute this to? Well, our country's been trying to figure out what the scientific reason is, right? Is this a bioweapon that escaped from some lab somewhere? Was this something that China did to us or some other country? Was this intentional? Was it a mistake? Somehow, unfortunately, that question, you're not sure of the information we get because it's become very political, right? Sadly, our science is really politicized right now. Our information is really politicized right now. That's sad to me. So how do we know? So I'm going to use a metaphor to attribute this to as an example. something a little different here. I have a list of favorite movies. I have 7 favorite movies that I consider, if everybody watched them and understood all the messages in them, we'd all make better choices. Right? You got some movies like that, right? I have this favorite movie called The Adjustment Bureau. Anybody seen that? No? Oh my God. I love it. The Adjustment Bureau. The stars are Matt Damon and Emily Blunt. He's a politician, like a senator, and she's an incredibly talented dancer, choreographer. And it starts out as they meet and have a powerful connection. And then they're all of a sudden separated for years. And then they find each other again. And they have a powerful connection. And they're separated again. And then they meet for the 3rd time, and they say, this is really important. We really want to be together. But something keeps getting in their way. They keep being pushed in different directions. Their life paths keep being adjusted separately. So Matt Damon finally is asking, what the hell is going on here? And this guy shows up that he keeps seeing with a hat on. And he says, hi, I'm from the Adjustment Bureau. The chairman has sent me, okay? And he opens up a piece of a booklet, and he says, I'm sorry, this is what your life path is supposed to be. And you keep deviating from it by trying to be with this woman. What? I have free will in my life. And the man from the Adjustment Bureau says, well, yeah, you have free will over all the little things in your life. You can decide what toothpaste to use. But, you have important work to do in your life, and we have a plan for you. The chairman has a plan for you, and that's what you need to do. And Matt Damon is complaining, like, what? I get to do with my life? Well, no, unfortunately, you are representative here of humanity, and we have some plans for humanity as a whole, and you have an important role to play. What do you mean? And they say, well, yeah, we want you to not only win this election, but the next 3. We want you to be president because you have some powerful things that you can do for the country. And Emily, this woman that you love, she has a different plan. She has to do these things in her life. And she will become very famous and a choreographer, all sorts of things. But if you stay together, you mess it up. You each rub off on each other and you mess it up. So Matt Damon complains about this a lot. I said, wait a minute. I can choose to do this. I said, well, no, you still screw up when you are affected by other things. And he says, why? What do you mean? Are you guys around all the time? And the man from the Adjustment Bureau says, well, yeah. Don't you recognize humanity? I mean, humanity screws up unless we do step in and make adjustments at different times. He says, what do you mean? Well, let me give you a quick history lesson. So we stepped in with this planet at first, right? And we brought people, the Neanderthals, out of the caves up to the Roman Empire, right? First understanding of civilization. That was us. We did a lot of interventions then. And then we stepped back to see how humanity was doing. So what happened? Just in a little while, what did people do? The Dark Ages. 500 years of nothing. Stupidity. Superstition. You didn't handle it very well as a species, right? So we stepped in again. We figured, okay, well, let's try again. So we brought you the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, right? The Reformation, the Age of Enlightenment. We started you off with science and inventions and logic, rationality, medicine, okay? that really made a difference, right? You started to really become a civilization all around the world. Science, industry, all these things were invented. So again, all right, you guys have got lots of tools now, planet. We step back. What did you do? World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, the atomic bomb. What could you have done differently? So Matt Damon's kind of going, well, okay, I see your point, but isn't the world still kind of screwed up? And the guy says, well, yeah, but it's still here. We didn't blow it up yet. So now he has to make a choice. He has to say what he wants to do. And then he explains this stuff to her. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of the plot because I really think it's worth visiting. But at some point he says, all I am is the choices I make. All I have is the choices I make. And he says, is this a test? And the guy laughs and says, yeah, it's all a test. It's all a test or it's not a test. But how do you respond to the things in your life? How do you determine if you value free will? Again, I don't want to give up the plot, but what do you think they do when they decide that they want to have free will? What do we do if we want to have free will? What do we do as a planet now with the adjustments that have been made? There's one other kind of brilliant part of the movie is that not only the two main characters have to figure out what they're doing, but all the guys who are sent to make these adjustments, you know. The chairman has a whole group of employees who are sent to make these interventions, and they have to figure out, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is the chairman right? Or am I just following orders? Especially those people that think they're following orders from God. We have a problem with that on our planet, don't we? People think they're following orders. But what do you think the chairman responds when we take responsibility for our choices? Again, it's worth seeing. But free will is a gift that we have to not take for granted. And that's the challenge, I think, on our planet right now, individually, has what to do with what we think, what we feel, and what we believe. We've reimagined a few things. We have a new holiday, right? Juneteenth. That took a long time to come. Do we still have a real holiday honoring Native Americans? Yeah, well, that's kind of blank spaces in our history, right? So what would it be if we all believed in some of the same things? I always find it interesting to imagine if everybody on the planet believed in reincarnation. There was an interesting news show about Japan because they were comparing the police concept of police around in different countries on the planet. The police in Japan help people find their way home if they're lost. They don't have crime to deal with. So they asked the guy there who was analyzing it, why don't they have crime? He says, well, everybody believes in karma. We all know we're going to be reborn again. We believe in karma. We don't want to create any more karma. Or we're just dealing from our other karma. They don't have crime to deal with. There's other countries that believe in karma, a lot of Eastern countries. They make different choices. We could make different choices too. What would happen if everybody expected a future life? Do you think we might take better care of the planet? We might take a little better care of the environment if we were expecting to live here again in 50 years or 70 years or 100 years, not just our children. Would that make a difference? Would we make better choices about taking care of the planet? This is all about what we think and feel and believe. So what did you do during COVID? Okay. We're back out again. What are you doing differently? I got to admit, I accomplished one thing. A lot of people talk about having learned something new or studied something new or read that pile of books in there that have been there for years. I have a confession. I had a room in my house that was full of stuff. Never mind the garage, that's full of stuff too. But there was a whole room in my house full of stuff. If you want to really be honest, some of it was mine, most of it was my husband's, of course, his stuff. Now his stuff was his hoarding. Mine was just my stuff, right? But the point is, I hadn't touched that stuff for 10 and 20 years, right? It had been sitting there blocking up and filling up this entire room for most of 20 years. Am I embarrassed to say that? Well, a lot of it was from my store when my store went broke 20 years ago. And when I opened those boxes, I had to cry all the way through them, right? I had to process all the feelings that I had put away for all that time. I had to freak out and end up as a little puddle on the floor over and over and over again. I am comforted, though, by the fact that I know that nobody else in this room has a bunch of stuff they haven't touched for 20 years, right? No hands? 10 years? Oh. Okay, well, that's something I did. The best part was that, one, I couldn't do it by myself. Louis over there introduced me to this wonderful friend of his who has really good OCD, right? He came and helped me, and he went through this stuff, and he put it in categories, right? And he put it in piles, and he said, okay, this is a pile for you to go to, and this is a pile to go through. And he'd put just enough so that I could do it for 2 or 3 hours, and by that time I'd be crying and I was down in a puddle. But he didn't keep me going. He let me stop after those 3 hours, and then we'd just do the next day. He was wonderful. And we cleared out the whole room. And then I was out in front of my, I said, oh, thank you. You know, the universe sends you help, right? And then I was out in front of my store, and I saw this cool van that said Mr. T's Construction Company, TEA. Oh, that's cute, right? Mr. T's Construction Company. And then the guy got out of the van and said, hi, Valann. Okay. This was a guy that I spent a lot of time with in my store when he was 17 years old. I hadn't seen him for 20 years, right? So now he has Mr. T's Construction Company. Thank you, universe. He remodeled that whole room. And now there's a whole room in my house that is beautiful and fit for human habitation. And because it's even on the lower floor, it's cool. So I have a place to go that's cool for the summer. And my daughter lives there now. That was the whole thing that I accomplished during COVID. I'm really proud of it. It only took a year and a half, right? But I also got through all those feelings left over that I hadn't dealt with for 20 years, right? That was the big part. So I need to acknowledge that I at least accomplished that. So I want us to spend a little time to think about what we want to do differently now. And I'm going to ask us to do something that's a little more traditional in a little bit different way, which is kind of what I mostly like to do, right? I'm going to ask Jeff to play a YouTube video. And I've talked a little bit before about this woman that I study with a bit that teaches about Mary Magdalene and is in Spain. And it's a video of her singing and chanting in Aramaic, because she works with a lot of translations and ancient translations of Aramaic. And it's a translation of the Lord's Prayer, or they talk about it about Father's Prayer. Now, we've had our Father's Prayer here in church a lot of times, even some different variations. We haven't done it for a while. And I admit that I was very unhappy with having it be just something that was just done because it was supposed to be something you did in church. But it's real interesting for me to have kind of explored it in a different way. I'm going to ask Jeff to go ahead and play it, and I'll ask you to listen to it for a couple of minutes, and then I'm also going to read an English translation of the Aramaic that I really appreciate. It's different. We're not used to hearing that language. We're not used to hearing chanting. She's just playing a frame drum, which is traditional in the Middle East. So just listen for a minute. Let yourself relax. Even if you don't know, don't try to perhaps figure out what she's saying. But just hear the sound, because I think it's beautiful. This is how the women would have played when Jesus was teaching. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound, light, and vibration, may your light be experienced in my utmost holiest. Your heavenly domain approaches. Let your will come true in the universe, just as on earth. Give us wisdom for our daily need. Detach the fetters of faults that bind us, karma, like we let go of the guilt of others. Let us not be lost in superficial things, but let us be freed from that which keeps us off from our true purpose. From you comes the all-working will, the lively strength to act, the song that beautifies all and renews itself from age to age. Let yourself take a few moments to feel that. What choices do we want to make? What choices do we want to make for our true purpose? What choices do we want our world to make for our true purpose? Translation means a lot. I read an interesting story about the King James Version of the Bible. Apparently, at some point, King James's life was in danger by other people, and so he was sent away and hidden with other people. And it turns out that the people he was hidden with were Knights Templar, and that they taught him a lot of the mysteries and true meanings of things. And this teaching said that he then went, and when he made the King James Bible, he wrote it in code. He hid the mysteries in code. So it has something to do with going back to the true translations, to the true mysteries that are there, and made it a little bit difficult for people to understand the truth. So the concept of understanding the Bible literally shouldn't exist. In the Aramaic translation, the word amen, I particularly like. It's a concept. It says it means sealed in trust, faith, and truth. In that one word. To say amen means to seal it in trust, faith, and truth. May your plans, may your imagined possible life be sealed in trust, faith, and truth. Amen. Thank you. So on this beautiful end of June, let us have, to close, the prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.